All right, welcome everybody to today's session. My name is Tammy Horsfall. I'm a market expert here at NAGA. And with me today, I have Frank, who's also a market expert here at NAGA. Frank, do you want to say hi?
Welcome, guys. Welcome to our podcast. It's going to be our first edition, and I'm excited for Tammy's questions, as always.
All right. So today we're going to be considering the dollar, Mr. Frank. What do you think? The dollar has been gaining fantastic strength in recent times. A lot has been happening with it. It's been pressuring other assets. And we've seen a few correlations when it also comes to what it has been doing also to crude oil. Do you think that's also a factor to crude oil? What do you think about the dollar strength so far?
I recently, Tammy, had the interview with the Swedish guys on the television channel, talking commodities. And these guys were asking me, Frank, why were you shorting the dollar? And I was saying, look, the markets look kind of quite weak. And now we saw, as you mentioned, the dollar strength pushing equities down, other assets, precious metals, but oil. Your question obviously is well. So dollar is going to gear up some momentum, and the dollar momentum, the positivity, due to the kind of basically no rate hike, but to the hawkish statements of the Federal Reserve. And for you guys to recap, last week we had the FOMC meeting, and what we saw is they said, look, we're not going to turn back towards low interest rate regime. So it means we should expect that interest rates in the US should remain at higher levels, and thus obviously kind of supporting the dollar. So the greenback, Tommy, in my understanding, should get and gear up further momentum potentially. Obviously there might be setbacks depending on how you look at the charts, how you trade or how you invest, but shorter term there might be kind of market momentum to the downside. But when I'm eyeing the dollar index, I see that the 100 US dollar, and that's, or not 100 US dollar, but the psychological 100 level has been pushed beyond. And that's to me an indication that the dollar is going to gear up momentum and staying sharp and strong, yes.
Oh, okay, so the Fed chair as well, the new Fed chair, he did mention the forward guidance was looking like, okay, interest rate may stay longer for higher for longer. But as a matter of fact, after that statement, which where we see the dollar start gaining strength and the rest of it, a lot of people are suggesting that it's even possible that we could even see a rate hike instead of a rate cut, based on what the forward guidance was suggesting. What do you think how do you think that plays into the dollar as well? Do you think that will give it more momentum? Like you said, if it could stay stronger for longer, you did mention you were shorting. And as a matter of fact, the strength currently, I checked euro dollar just before we began this podcast, and it was surging lower as well. So what do you think? Do you think that they are continually going to keep this rate higher for longer? Or do you see a future where probably we could see a rate cut?
I don't think necessarily a rate hike is going to follow. I mean, to recap that one, we saw oil markets, and maybe that was my mistake just now. So I shorted oil, right, when oil was high, and not the dollar. Okay. I was mistakenly kind of mixing up both assets. But the oil market coming down, obviously also supported by geopolitical tensions easing and by the strengthening US dollar. Now, back to your US dollar. If we see rate hikes, this would obviously kind of likely support the dollar even further. However, I don't think rate hikes are going to happen because with the geopolitical tensions kind of easing potentially, war between Iran and US likely getting some solutions being found, potentially, hopefully at least, right? So that kind of brings down oil. The lower oil price also obviously helps the economy and helps actually consumer prices or price inflationary momentum going down. And with inflation lower, I don't see that the Federal Reserve is going to hike rates. Before that, kind of basically the last week or the week prior might have said, yes, we might see that the Federal Reserve or the FOMC is going to kind of increase rates at some point. But at the moment with the current situation, I don't think this is going to happen. But what we see is that the higher for longer regime should already start to support the dollar. And that's something maybe, as we can see, also kind of having a bigger impact on all assets, right? So like oil markets, we touched that already, lower. And Tammy, metals. I know that you are keeping an eye on that, on the precious metals market as well. How do you think about metals?
Of course, like you said, Gold as well is one of the things I've been looking at, and gold, we've been seeing it as well. Of course, if you remember the run of gold last year, it was very superb. It
Yeah.
traded almost vertical the entire year. And we've seen a lot of correction in recent time, very deep correction. And usually, it's the normal reaction when you see dollar gain strength, crude tend to tilt to the downside most times because, of course, crude and gold, they're all priced in dollar. And we are seeing that same thing happening now. It's questionable whether it's due to the easing of geopolitical tension or the dollar strength itself that we are seeing. Brent crude currently trade around $77 per barrel. Well, gold as well is surging lower, and basically that could be as a factor of the strength of the dollar. Is surging lower as well. But that aside, we've covered crude, we've covered gold. What do you're the stock expert, so I want to put it to you right here. What do you think about stocks? Because like you said earlier, or like you mentioned earlier, a lot of them have been falling. I must mention there's one of the big giants that just came in play, which is SpaceX, which we saw last week that over a couple of days, it gained over $1 trillion, right? And what do you think? What do you think about stocks in general?
Well, interesting question. Some call me the FX guru. Now you're talking to me like the stock market expert. I don't know, whatever I am. But you said the US dollar is rocking high, and I was just about to think about SpaceX, obviously kind of rocking to the moon, basically, right? But jokes aside, Tammy, I don't think, to be honest, that SpaceX is just, it was maybe a bit overvalued, like trading at whatever quadruple billion times earnings, whatever earnings they even have, And what I'm thinking at the moment, and we saw it, it was climbing SpaceX towards 225 or something, and now we are back at 150, 160 US. I haven't checked it out as we speak today, but I think it was seemingly like an interesting shorting opportunity or something like a pump and dump story. Basically, the big guys kind of got their hands onto it and now offloading a little bit, kind of, and just making profits. While if I were interested in this market, it's going to be interesting where the market might lead to. That aside as well, equities, to me, they look kind of a bit shaky. And again, we're coming back to square one, Tommy. The US dollar strength is going to kind of maybe cause an impact. Now, we had the rate regime we talked about last week by the FOMC, and that initially led for stock markets to weaken. And then now, end of last week, Thursday, or rather Friday, equities were starting to increase. This week early on as well, equities continuing to push slightly higher. But what we see is that seemingly now some sort of feedback or some sort of pressure might kick back in here. And I'm eyeing at the moment the NASDAQ, and it just basically today did a real nosedive, right? So this market now looks to me like it might be ready for some sort of correctional pattern. But where do we come from? I mean, we came from all-time highs, the US, Lebanon, Israel, Iran story, Middle East, and markets rocking to the upside. I mean, we are trading near the record highs, basically, in the stock markets. A correction would just be normal to me. And if the US dollar stays strong, which I believe, we might even see a bit more downside momentum in equities, where some long-term investors might say, look, let's buy something rather cheap, because we have always these two pillars. We had the first one where the earnings season turning out good, turning out positive, right? Good earnings, better than expected in quite a few cases. Or the positive earnings data is telling us stocks might rise. But the second pillar, and that's always central bank policy, is just telling us, we don't see easing rates. We don't see rates kind of coming down. But instead we see and we hear, and that was the throughout maybe last year or the third and fourth, say the last quarter last year and the first quarter this year, rates will come down again. But now we know they don't. And that's now maybe the pure story, Tommy, where I would be interested to wait, rather, if I would kind of trade equities or the stock market, or look maybe to cash in some profits. If I have something, some Nvidia, some whatever stocks, I will maybe cash in, a little bit.
Yeah, of course. Just before I say this or put this last question to you, of course, we've seen the stock market rise. We've seen the stock market rise in amidst the strength of the dollar. Now, usually that should be the opposite, right? Usually when the dollar gain momentum, equities should see pressure, right? But it's been said, like, there are some stocks that apparently have held up the stock market as it were, especially when we look at the Nasdaq indices, for instance. We see the Nasdaq trying to make all-time highs before what we are experiencing today, which looks like a nosedive. And a lot of market experts have said how, this is not actually equity strength in general. There are just a few equities or stocks that are holding up the market, particularly those driven by AI, those AI large companies, etc. So what is your take? What is your take on that? What is your take? Do you think that these AI companies or these big companies that are emerging, even with new AI stuffs, when I say new AI stuff, like new people entering the AI space and the competition for the race on AI, do you think that will continually help the Nasdaq, or do you just see a heavy correction coming at the horizon?
Well, I mean, we have big fragmentation in the equity market, which we've had over the recent couple of years. I mean, quite often we have this, right? So like tech companies, AI driven, that's now the world is going to die without AI. I mean, it looks like we don't have any food tomorrow if AI dies or something. I have no clue. But that's the crazy market, Tammy. And what I think at the moment, is that we see maybe just a bit of a correction. And I wouldn't wonder if the markets come lower a fair bit, maybe also from current levels. But if I'm eyeing the general stocks, right? So we have the smaller company, we have like Kraft Heinz, the ketchup guys, right? So deep down, Diageo down, McCormick reporting earnings this week if they haven't yet. Alexander Real Estate, they're all kind of down as well. And they've not started, moving higher. Banking stocks, they are somewhat holding up. But, the big guys, the big Nvidias, whatnot, they and the ones who had been gaining previously are likely also the ones when markets start to correct to kind of reinverse the movement and just nosediving, right? So it's just a matter right now, can Elon Musk really kind of land a rocket again as he claims? Meaning, can the stock market kind of face a bit of a soft landing and come down slightly only, or will we see that a bigger correction is in the making? I'm not sure about what's going on at the moment, but I would be utterly careful because the one pillar, which is the high interest rate regime in the US, is likely going to stay. And Tommy, this might actually cause some negative input. Yeah.
Of course. All right, guys, we've been covering the dollar, the strength of the dollar up. We're seeing crude oil push lower. We're seeing gold as well, looking like it's going to continually dig down. And of course, the stock market itself. Nasdaq has been fantastic, but of course, like we said earlier today we experienced like a nosedive on the Nasdaq. Well, is it going to continually go higher? The S&P, are they going to make more higher highs? We are looking at that one. But in the meantime, myself and Frank, we're here to cover all these stories for you. Just keep it abreast. Make sure you keep watching the podcast. Frank, what's your final take before we end this?
I got another personal question to you, Tommy, but I'm going to answer and ask this next session. And guys, if you've tuned into our session this time, just leave a like under the video and put your comments if you have any, and give us your feedback. If you have any questions, any topics you like Tommy and me to cover, just bring them up and we'll make sure that we get them answered for you next time. Tommy, thanks as always. A pleasure working together. Cheers, buddy.
Of course. All right, guys, until we come your way next time, we want to wish you good luck and good trading. Take care.